Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Creative Glue. Today we're kicking off an exciting journey as we delve into the world of creative connections. Our host Scott Robinson will be joined by Matt Lewis and Anita Pettit from Emergence Creative Festival. They'll take a stroll down memory lane to chat about how over the years Emergence has turned into a hub for some seriously surprising collaborations and creative projects. We'll also hear more on what to expect at the festival in 2024. So now, strap yourself in to hear all about the creative glue that is Emergence.
Creative glue. Your ideas and my ideas will stick together like glue. 'Cause we've got the creative glue.
Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Creative Glue. Now, this is a podcast that's dedicated to exploring when creativity becomes a common bond. And we're going to be looking at a whole bunch of different people on this. And we are going to be talking about creative collaborations from all over the world. And to kick things off, we're launching the podcast as an Emergence Special. Now, as many of you know, the Emergence Creative Festival is back, and we're super proud to be supporting it again in 2024. Emergence is something I've been really privileged enough to be involved in since its antecedents, and today I can't wait to chat with the granddaddy of the festival. That's right, the Grand Poobah, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy that started it all, Mr. Matt Lewis. And with him, his trusty sidekick and partner in crime for this year's festival, the festival director, Miss Anita Pettit. Welcome to you both.
I don't know if her husband's going to cruise with a miss, but thanks, Scotty. What an outro with an intro.
Love it.
Thanks, Scott.
I
Great
love
to
it.
be here.
Now, we've been talking about this for a long time, so it's great to be finally rocking and rolling. And more importantly, how awesome is it to see the Emergence Creative Festival back?
Absolutely. I mean, just to see the resurrection from the dust of, 10 days out from COVID, to see phones going off and seeing people having to leave countries, not get into countries, and seeing it unravel and unfold. And then to be sadly in the can down the hole of $150,000, wondering how we're going to get out of it, but somehow going, you know what, we've got to get the creators back online. Let's run the Emergence Congregation. I think it was the first online conference I took part in, and we had live jam sessions in bathtubs, we had outros, and people on farms on tractors all talking about getting ready for a lockdown. But it's taken us since 2024 to actually reboot it, and that's through the extraordinary support of Anita, the team, the creative core, and yourselves, guys, as a founding folly of Emergence, mate. You're a co-founder in my mind. I would never like to take credit for the idea. I'm a Kickstarter of colliding minds, and one thing I would have to say that there was a whole team that sort of conceived, developed Emergence, and actually got it off the ground. And I just hate taking credit for other people's sort of nuggets as well. So I claim to fail, not be infamous.
Well, mate, I think there would be many that would argue about how much of Emergence is a Matt Lewis creation, but we can debate that another time, because I want to take us back a little, and you've gone somewhere here, and I want to rewind to Thursday, the 22nd of September, 2011, at 9:46 a.m. Right, I get an email from this character, Matt Lewis, under the title of Creative Cluster Meeting. And this was the first time that we started to chat about this thing called the creative, this creative festival thing.
I think the creative
talk us
corner was
through
like
that.
that was a bit of a, I've always been, regional development, hijacking significant funding pots to fund passion projects. And I'd had a creative business in Margaret River and Gracetown, dating back to 2000, but I used to charge by the case and not by the hour. So while I had a great lifestyle and I wasn't really commercial, my clients were as significant as Singapore Airlines, but even then I was still not really recognizing my value in that creative process. So when I took the government job, it sort of there's this burning passion of mine to actually support the creatives that I feel are that value in the community and also in the economic model and how they contribute to society. So a lovely woman called Pia Terchnikov, who was with Enterprise Connect, a federal funded project at the time. She and I cohorted this meeting at Richard Todd's place where we had an extraordinary amount of creatives that came into the room in the region. And the interesting thing about it is none of them knew each other. So whether you're a visual effects animator or a movie producer or a graphic designer, in your case, a creative agency, there was like, oh, I didn't know you were in this space. And we had potters and, melting pot glass studios, but this greater collective energy in the room.
Yeah, and I remember that meeting at Clancy's. We were all in the sort of top area there on a long couple of tables, and I think you know we've talked about this a lot, and I'm sure we'll explore this in our future Emergence specials about uh, the diversity of creatives that Emergence has always attracted and has been a hallmark of the festival. And I think that was something that you brought together in that very first sort of couple of meetings around this. And I think that's, traveled from that first cluster meeting right up to exactly what we see today as what Emergence has, grown into.
Totally. Well, I see everyone's part of a rhythm section or a part of a front end. And if you look at creativity, it doesn't move in silos, it moves in laterals. And therefore, Emergence was really an idea festival as well. So, technology was brought into it from the outset. That collaboration with OzApps that became Westech, and that
Yeah.
connection back with that crew, and that bond that we still have with those guys is really quite significant when you look at how the ecosystem for Western Australia's innovations sort of progressed in the last 10 years in terms of investment, talent attraction, it just goes on. And I think cultivating that culture of innovation, but I think there's still a lot of work to be done in that recognition that what creativity has to play in that whole entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, because drawing those different minds together allows just to dismantle the competition notion. It becomes
Yeah.
that collaboration piece that makes it interesting to go, look, I've got this idea for a project or an event. Who would be incredible to work on? Who do I want to work with? Who's my superhero in creativity that I would like to say? And what I loved about Emergence in the early days, there was no hierarchy, like keynotes and thongs and barefoot and raw and honest and authentic. So a 22-year-old emerging creative could just walk up to a CEO of a production company and say, hey, could I and normally the CEO, absolutely, why don't you come and hang out? Like we'd love you to be working on a project. I mean, and I see your team, and with Lucy and Noah and John. You've picked up this eclectic group that you've picked up through these journeys through Emergence, Scott, and especially the unique man behind you on the mural, June Hager.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Doom was a big part of Emergence, and again, when we start talking about those things that bring creative people together, him and Muchie
Am I
working on that
wise?
can, the small ale can, and then the opportunity for us looking for another creative and designer, and that introduction from there, and John with Bureau 42, who I met through Emergence. And his involvement down there. Lucy, another one. So Emergence has certainly been a critical part of of the creative glue that's brought the box together, as well as the other businesses. So was it 2012 or 2013 that the first Emergence
20,
kicked off?
2013, we actually
That was
officially registered the Creative Corner as a not-for-profit in 2012. And we certainly put the cart before the horse. I mean, I was talking about it yesterday. We're in a meeting with Australia Southwest about, their new marketing team are asking about the genesis of Emergence. And look, I date back to 2004, where I got thrown under a bus to be the coordinator of the first International Wine Tourism Conference. Another festival was doomed to fail and doomed to fall over until we met this extraordinary guy, Mr. Sir Peter Rigby, I call him, and Stuart McDonald, who headed up Asia Pacific for MasterCard. And we got off this plane. Midnight horror. Rigby falls into the meeting. We pitched this idea. He had another deal on the table for an expo event on wine and food. He said, I could bring 75 of my top clients to Margaret River to have an experience. And that forged a friendship with MasterCard, and still to this day. But something was niggling at me after we delivered that event. One was a breakup, and I was living in a shed basically in Margaret River, and I sat there and I went, God, I've got cabin fever. And that was sort of in 2004, thinking about a festival of winter, dark. But when we started the conversation about a few years later, there needed to be, I felt, a marketing conference for the region. But it was those inception meetings, Scott, that meant it ain't a marketing conference. This is a conference about creativity. And when I met with Paula Taylor, yourself, Noah Shilkin, and Mikey Dunn, the names just kept rolling into the dice, and people like Frank Pethiker, who were incredible coders and would claim to be uncreative, which I think's a complete bogus thing. A tech genius is more creative than any stick-drawing idiot like myself. So that really started that conversation. So the Creative Corner, I mean, you geniusly designed the logo for it, but then it quickly morphed into going, no, we're going to kick off with this festival. All the industry development capability work and the network, that'll come later. Let's bring everyone together. And I'd still remember at that time, there were, Perth in the advertising game going, what? They're going to do an Emergent? What is it? And then we got Noah's wife to knock up a cool little logo, and you guys helped build the website. Russell Ord started throwing us incredible pictures, as well as, Lauren Trickett, people like that are still frothing for it to come back. So it gave the locals this buy-in with this sort of national, state and local audience as well. So there you go.
Even bought in the 2016 shirt for you, mate. So
mate, that's a beauty.
Bit of history there for you. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that we did there, and I guess in hearing you talk, there's so many people that have been involved in this, and it got me thinking, like, how many people do you think you've helped connect over the years, Matty?
Look, I remember when we were going through.
We're talking millions, or are we talking billions, mate? Really?
Look, I mean, I get it, but it's really interesting because I'm really like a bad dating service. It's kind of like I'm like Fender's Bender for Tinder. You just call me Bender, because I just see. I admit to it. I'm a human-centered designer. I see things and I see connections that I can't explain. I had bipolar disorder in my 26, 28. It put me in an interesting state, but allowed me to actually see things a little bit differently. So I can actually see the playouts and set up the play. That's why I love umpiring kids footy and being all that sort of stuff, because I can map out the play. And so, 10 years later, you can see that outcome and go, there's nothing more fulfilling than actually seeing cool crew connecting and making things happen together. But the sad thing about it for me is that, I always have to justify it with a report and demonstrate my outcomes on my KPIs. And I say, but I don't work backwards. I work forwards. There's a play button. That's why a play button plays forward, not a rewind button. And I think that's been a real challenge for me as a creative individual. And when I go into meetings, we go, oh, those creatives. And it's almost like, that's insulting. You guys are champions of that ecosystem. Map out what they're thinking there to bring it back to here, and then we could project here.
And I think the Creative Corner's always been about creating those connections. And I guess thinking and speaking about those connections, let's talk more about this year's festival. Anita, this is your first creative festival, right? First Emergence?
That is correct. It sure is.
Oh. Have you got any idea what to expect?
I've been told a lot of stories, and so I'm not sure what to expect, but so far it's coming together and it's looking really exciting and really good. But from all the stories from Matt and the industry, it's going to be really interesting. So,
I mean, it really is its own beast, isn't it?
yes, it is. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many amazing speakers that we've had over the years, and I know, Anita, some of those speakers have already been announced. But like, can you give us a little bit more about them, and and what they'll be bringing to this year's event? What we know so far?
What we know so far. So we've got actually Grace Lamb and Jason Capi Bianco who featured and were about to come in 2020, but due to COVID. So we've actually got them back on board. They're amazing
Fantastic.
couple that are going to talk about creatives and working as creatives together and sort of how that comes about. And then we've also got Ivan Shaw, who actually came to us through a workshop in Creative Australia and, played down his role and just said, oh, I'm just, I don't do much. And he, worked in the UK with some amazing photographers. So he's one of the ones. And then also
Cool.
we've got Sharu, who's coming from Singapore, from Heckler HQ. And besides that, we've got a great lineup of sort of more in the space of inclusivity and in the sustainability sort of architectural worlds as well, so music and all cross platform. So yeah, we're really excited.
So is there any breaking news that you can give us a bit of insight on? I mean, we promise we won't tell anybody. It'll be just between us and anybody listening to this podcast, of course. But like, is there any snippets that we can give people that might not be all out there that you only get if you're listening to the podcast?
All right.
Oh, come on, give us something, Maddie. Give us a little
Well,
snippet.
it's actually your mate that you introduced us to, Steve Back. Now, the global village is another topic of conversation. It's about the return effect of these West Australian champions living abroad for 20, 30 years, like Richard Bullock, people like, sort of any of this Emergence alumni. I mean, Sophie Matheson in Vietnam's another classic example. She's one to be almost like our guru, chief programmer under the scenes, unrecognised for Emergence for many years. But these extraordinary West Australians living abroad that are coming back, that are accessible and want to contribute, and look at the previous years of Emergence and go, oh my God, so and so spoke at Emergence. I worked with them in London. I worked with them in New York. I worked with them in Sydney. They're and I think that's Steve's going to be. When I spoke to Marty Wilson, who's an extraordinary director in Western Australia, who's going to come down for his first Emergence and has got plans to
Great.
launch a film in Nana. He said to me, mate, if you're getting the likes of Steve back to Emergence, that's off the charts. And it's like, well, he's on our doorstep. So the
Yeah.
doorstep's really quite interesting.
And Steve's it's such a great CD, and what he brings to the table is magical. So having him on board will be really great. So people definitely shouldn't miss that. And it sounds like there's a lot more to come. And as always, I'm pumped as this event gets closer and closer each time. It doesn't really matter. But now I'm curious to ask you both. Since Emergence clearly brings together some amazing creative people, what is the secret to what brings and keeps together creatives in general? Like, what is the key ingredient in creative glue for you guys? What do you think?
I think it's authenticity and integrity and that human connection. So I think that's paramount and important, and that's what brings everyone together in the same room. And I keep hearing Matt say, like, there's other festivals out there that just aren't the same as Emergence Creative, and so we've actually got something really unique in the region that we offer that I believe that really isn't offered anywhere else in the world. So that's what's special about it.
Yeah.
I concur with, I just think, this region is a magical place. It's like the minute people get on that road trip down and the locals are ingratiated. And, I was at a coffee shop this morning talking about the creative crawl and some of the antics that I still continue here where people have met, couples have made, not babies, but couples have connected through the festival, all this personal connection that have been bridged through it. We don't go looking for rock stars. We don't go looking for the big name and lights that's going to sell a couple of hundred tickets. You've got to keep reading between the lines on Emergence and actually go, as we talked about Kylie Robertson the other day, head of creative publishing for Penguin, but her little nugget creative projects that she developed in a what was a dying industry of publishing, and she took them into the next realm of immersive and design and interactive, means that we've always been able to thread the current state of the creative climate. So whether it's AI, motion capture, immersive, music licensing in film or TV or whatever, we can actually have that point on it and go, but you know what? The fundamental thing that's never going to change? Creativity. We need that magic to keep flowing so that our tools that we use, whether it be AI or better road sound systems and this, great postcard, allow us that ability to get it out there. I'm enjoying being lazy, sitting on a chair, talking in a podcast, running around talking to a couple hundred people.
Yeah. And look, I love that. And I guess, that there's lots of things in there that we're continuing to see be part and ingredients of what is that creative glue that's so evident when you start to talk to people. And for me, I feel a bit of a full circle moment. This year, we've been obviously fortunate enough to get back involved with the festival as a creative partner, along with some other creative brands, including Panda Candy and Uso Digital, Bureau 42, Ovis Creative, as that creative partnership there. And it's been great to see the festival coming to life again. And there's so much more to come. Now, before I wrap it up, I want to ask you both, what are your top tips for any Emergence first-timers listening? Because we know that there's a few trips and tribulations that you probably have to navigate if you're a first-timer. Maddie, maybe we kick off with you. What's your top tip for someone coming for the first time? Because Anita might need this.
I think it relates back to an article I wrote on LinkedIn that no one ever read. It was the death of the hipster, the birth of the quirkster. Be yourself, just rock up and be open to just meet and introduce yourself to everyone. We have a policy of we don't, it's not official, but don't bring your ego, just bring yourself and just be. And if things run under time, things don't go to schedule, that's meant to be as well. So that fluidity and the flow that we're hoping to bring back to the festival, that was sort of, I think, the personalities that sort of gave it that edge, if you like, and just keep an open mind and enjoy yourself. Let play be the orchestra and the curation of it, and the business will come.
I love it. Well, look, that's it for the first ever podcast, an episode of Creative Glue. We've lined up an amazing group of alumni for all the previous Emergence Creative Festivals and in the lead up to the 2024 event that we'll be talking to. And there's a bunch of creative people that we'll be exploring in terms of their collaborations and what's made them stick together. So tune in for the future episodes. But right now, what you need to do is you need to head to emergencecreative.com and get yourself a pass to this year's festival. The theme this year is Make Space, and that's exactly what you should be doing, making space to be part of this incredible event. If you haven't been, it really is hard to describe, as Maddie said, and you just need to get there to experience it. Now, Lucy, who can you tell us that we should be expecting to hear from in the next episode of Creative Glue?
So next week, Scott will be joined by Will Alexander and Glenn Urquhart, both Emergence alumni who've been involved in multiple festivals over the years. Will is the co-founder and executive producer of Heckler, an award-winning post-production, design, animation and visual effects studio based in Sydney and Singapore. Glenn is a creative director. He's worked all over the world on both client and agency side of the fence as CD, copywriter, director, editor, strategist and consultant. Thanks again for making space, and keep an eye on our socials for more details and the next episode of Creative Glue. another Emergence Special.